All right, how about now? All right, good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, we got it working. Yay.
Oh,
They
good.
issued me a new laptop and
Oh,
it was giving me a little bit of trouble. So good
okay.
morning or good afternoon, everyone. Do we have quorum yet, Karen, or are we waiting on?
We, mm, you have, not quite, not quite. There are four of you. So you need one more person.
1, 2, 3. So Dr. Ritchie is not a voting member of the group. She's kind of visiting. So to kind of like help me and like thinking about after the facts kind of thing. So we're missing right now Patrice and
Yes.
Margaret. And we knew Margaret wasn't coming because she
Right.
has something else that came up. So we're just kind of waiting on Patrice. We can, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 of us, right? 1, 2,
Right.
3, 4.
Is 4 out of 6 a quorum?
Yes, that's a
Okay,
majority.
so then we do.
You can start.
Yes. So we can start. Yay. All right.
Yay.
Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited for the work ahead of us. I hope the beginning of your school year has gone well. We're on day 5, I think, here in Newington with our students, and it's been exciting. And I'm looking forward to this year and all the work that we're going to be doing with my new group of first graders. But for this group, I'm also very excited because we have the regs to finally like sink our teeth into and start to get work on. So I'm really excited for the work around the regulations because we've fulfilled our statutory obligations for the earlier items. We have we have 2 more statutory obligations, one for July of 2026 in terms of like that EPP alternative route program, looking at that part of it. And then we have a report due to the education committee in January. But this ad hoc is working on all the regulations as a whole, including those regulations that are set to sunset in July of 2026. I want to first thank you all for the conversation and really putting eyes to the actual regulation language for those that are sunsetting at our August 11th meeting. I think it speaks to us doing our due diligence and really looking at each one of them and ensuring that we truly understand what's in those regulations before we move forward and recommend whether they should truly be sunsetted or if we need replacement language or what have you there. So Karen, can you pull up the agenda just so that I can kind of review it really quickly? And we are calling the meeting to order, just for Robert's rules here, at 3:34. And we'll go ahead and do the roll. So I'll do the roll while Karen pulls up the agenda. If you could just say aye. Jennifer Rodriguez, aye, I'm here. I have Kristen Besega.
Here.
Thank you. Margaret Gustafson is not here, but we knew that. Patrice McCarthy is not currently on. Catherine Rowe.
Aye.
Here. Thank you. And Sarah Fitzsimons.
Here.
Thank you. And Dr. Ritchie is not here yet, but she may be joining us shortly, just to kind of, be a part of that really good conversation that I'm hoping that we will be having. So as part of this meeting, Karen caught that our 13A group, regulation ad hoc group, they didn't have quorum for approximately 3 meetings, and therefore they could not approve their minutes at the time. Karen looked into Robert's rules and we could have a special meeting or an additional ad hoc do that. And because Kristen was the chair of that particular committee at that time, we can just go ahead and approve those minutes here. So if you've had a moment to review the minutes that were forwarded from the 13A ad hoc for April 8th, May 5th, and June 5th. barring any, are there any changes to those minutes or concerns with the minutes at this time?
So can I make a motion to review them as a group? Or approve them as a group?
Absolutely. All right, so it looks like we have Dr. Rowe, who is making a motion to approve the three as a group. Typically, I would just say barring any edits, they are approved as written, but because there's three of them and we had to review them and we might not have been a part of the group, I think that it's appropriate for us to kind of like have that motion go through. So thank you. Then we have a second by Kristen.
Yep, I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving those 3 minutes of April 8th, May 5th, and June 5th, please raise your hand now. If I can get mine to, there we go. All right, that has unanimously passed. Thank you. And that's a check for Karen and the work that we've done for the board. So thank you for catching that, Karen, and kind of tying that up for us. We appreciate that. So the scope and the goal of the ad hoc committee on regulations is really to review the regulations. We're going to be reviewing not just the ones that are set to sunset. We're also going to be reviewing the regulations as a whole. As part of our charge, we want to make sure that we are modernizing and adjusting and using the work that we did in the past reports to kind of guide some of the work through the regulations as well, right? Like we had criteria that we had identified as part of the other ad hocs for our statutory obligation deadlines. And now that we have kind of some of those lenses in place, we're going to go through and start reviewing the regs. So the purpose of this particular meeting is one, identifying how we want to approach the regs, and two, identifying how often we should meet and for the duration and what the duration is so that we can have it on our calendars to meet regularly and get this done so that we can submit parts or themes or whatever it is that we decide as a group to the board moving forward. So I would like to kind of open that up. So we did the overview of prior board review, clarifying, okay, scope, the scope. So that's the scope. The overview of prior board review are the notes. Karen kind of went through the August 11th video and kind of wrote down the notes for us to consider that we received feedback from the board on of the reg review that we did based on the SDE document. So Karen, if you want to bring that one up right now, we can just kind of go through it briefly and then we can forward that to the board or to the ad hoc committee as well. Patrice sent a message saying she's trying to get in, but her iPad Teams is not allowing it or something along the lines. All right. So, I just want to clarify, Karen, did Dr. Rowe motion to review the minutes or to group the minutes together for us to approve when we approve them?
I said to approve, oh, sorry,
To group them together, correct? That's fine.
Yes.
to approve them as a group.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. I just wanted to double
Yes.
check. All right.
All right.
Hi, Athena. All right, so do you have that document up, the one that you had forwarded me today, Karen?
Yes.
On the meeting notes for regulations?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Karen was able to put together this kind of quick review as we went through each one, and no discussion, meaning that there was no concern over those individual ones. I'm going to have her forward this to the group along with the SDE document after this meeting, the one that we reviewed at the August 11th. So kind of you have both the links as well as this kind of notes to go off of as part of that. But there was a couple of things that were put in there. So Cactopus will move forward with the responsibilities one for the 400. There was no discussion for 407A through D. There was some comment on 407H. This regulation should be maintained bilingual education. Then the 60-day long-term substitute must have authorization. 608 was an endorsement. So these will be the kind of things that we'll keep in mind as we go through them in our meetings. But we wanted to let you know that there is those notes that were taken as part of the August 11th meeting. So the big question is, let me see, can't get in on my iPad. Does anyone have any questions on this particular list? So Karen, can you forward this list to everybody on this meeting as well as part of our grouping that maybe aren't here, along with the original SDE document that we reviewed at the August 11th meeting that has all the links to these regs, so that way they can review them as part of our work?
Of course.
And then let's pull the agenda back up.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. I know you're trying to help Patrice as well. I appreciate the effort.
You're welcome.
Perfect, thank you. So discussion approach on the way in which we want to review the updated regulations. So this is when we as a group kind of decide, are we tackling just or initially tackling, the sunsetting regs? Are we looking at themes, meaning certification, EPP, like in those kinds of ways, or something else? So I'm opening up the floor to discussion on thoughts on how we should proceed with the regulations review and amendments and suggestions that we will make to the board. All right, Kristen, go ahead.
I mean, if it's not a problem, like one of the things that I did when I was on the bylaws ad hoc committee was come to each meeting with like the draft of the bylaws. So we weren't starting from scratch. So if it would be helpful, I would like to take a look at some of the regulations in advance and just put like notes on the side so that when we're looking at a chunk of regulations that we'll have, so we're not starting from scratch. So we're starting from having someone have reviewed it already a little bit. And I was, because there are so many, thinking, like you had called them chunks, but I was thinking like one thing to be careful is if we go in just number order, that one thing that like might get edited in section 400 might affect 600. So we should probably look at it in some sort of groupings together.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Catherine Rowe.
Thank you. Kristen, that's a huge lift, and I really appreciate you and your willingness to do that. It would be great if you started that work and then perhaps share it with the group before we meet, because it's a huge piece. And I agree with you, like for us to just start, we have so much to do. And regardless, unless we did this full time, it's going to be difficult for us to get this all done by July 26th. So being intentional about it and you drafting it up with some notes and then us being able to look at it and come back with feedback, yay or nay, I think that's really helpful. Yeah, I think that works great. And, and sharing that ahead of time so that we could all be prepped. And maybe I'm just going to make this recommendation. I understand this is a public session, right? But would it be helpful if we did some kind of a working document where we all were able to continually edit it? When I worked for the Department of Education, we did that. And then there were I would make some edits, somebody else would make edits, and we all made it. And then when we met, we really were able to say what worked, what didn't work. And this way we're all working on it when we're not meeting in our free time because we're all so busy. Just an idea, or we could just stick to you coming to the meeting. I just think that keeping the work going, if you think about it, we have a half a year to do a lot of work.
Yeah. I will say that I know that this came up in the past in terms of a working document, which is why we kind of moved to a thought exchange, was that it constituted a quorum if we had people working in the same document, which wasn't public, which is why we kind of shifted to that survey thought exchange, which allowed people to respond to it without responding to each other, which was the challenging part of the previous one that we had done very early on. But maybe we can think about like a way that could be turned into portions of it being like linked and people can like respond into it, and then we can go over the notes or something along those lines. But I do know that came up before as a challenge. Sarah, go ahead.
Kristen, I appreciate your offer to do that like you did with the bylaws. But I just wonder, I guess I want to get a little more clarity on the notes you would be taking, because if we're just kind of summarizing each section to make it more understandable for people to make a decision, I wonder if we could summarize it using a ChatGPT tool so that there's nobody's making any bias in what notes or how people are prioritizing things. I don't know if that would help or if we can even do that. But I also feel like it would be a lot of work for one person, and I don't want to put that burden on one person.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, Kristen.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the idea of the shared document. So maybe because of like what Jen was saying with shared documents, not like being kosher with FOI or open meetings, like if we know that a section is going to be discussed in 2 weeks, that we get people's thoughts in advance. So we know what we're looking at. And that way it's kind of like ongoing and is not, the first time you see the document is when you show up to the meeting,
Thank you. All right. So sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, no, so I just we have such limitations with this. First of all, everything we do is an FOI, right? So I mean anybody could elicit any documents. So that's one piece of it. But I'm unsure, and I just totally understand like the parameters here. But we do have so much work to do in a very short period of time. So it would be helpful if there was some way, maybe we do track changes that are not shared. Is there a way to do something like that where I could look at something and not see somebody else's track changes and then we just share them at a group meeting? Is that at all possible? I don't know. Maybe I just have my own document and I just run it and then I could just share it. It's just, to come together. I mean, I've been involved in the bylaws. I I've been on ad hocs before, and we need to kind of move this swiftly, expeditiously, and efficiently, and it has to be, with the best intentions, right? So, how can we provide, that level of collaboration inside of the parameters? I don't know. Jen, I'm looking at you because you're our leader, and I know I do. It's just there's so much, and and then other people have other opinions. So I may not necessarily agree with what Kristen is, postulating. So I might want to add my own take on it, and then I don't know, maybe Sarah has a different take on that. So then all of a sudden, we don't get anything done in an hour, right? So I'm going to go with the consensus just to kind of move things along. If there's any way, I know Karen's on the call, or that we would be able to figure out a way that we can collaborate underneath the parameters of FOI, I'm willing to do that.
So it sounds like you're asking the question of, is there any, and the theme that I'm hearing in general is there any platform in which we could provide feedback without maybe seeing each other's feedback and then constituting, or speaking to each other's feedback, then constituting a quorum, right? I know that we've used the survey function before, where we've written in like chunks of statute and we've asked people for feedback, and then the ad hoc was able to review that feedback as part of their work. So I'm wondering if that would be something that we could do. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of merging those two ideas, the idea of chunking and then putting it in, maybe that's part of what this committee does, is we break it out over the time we have, and then we put it in a survey so that we're sending it to people prior to meetings. So maybe part of what this committee does is we chunk it out, knowing that we may have to do a final review to make sure all the pieces fit, and that, one decision isn't significantly impacting another decision, but working on it, maybe this committee has to develop that timeline of breaking everything out.
So what I'm thinking is, how about Kristen, depending on like how far you want to go down to, how about the initial meeting, you bring kind of what you have forward. It would be shared with the group in advance to allow us time to review it. And let's see how the first meeting goes. If during that first meeting, we're like, this is taking up too much time, we really need to find a different way of doing this. And, adjusting and providing our feedback to it prior to, then we can make that adjustment and that suggestion in that meeting based on how we work as an ad hoc. So how about at this point, why don't we kind of identify how we want to tackle them, right? So are we tackling these through themes, chunks? How would the group prefer to tackle them? Are we prioritizing one over another in there? So Kristen, go ahead.
Okay, so you asked a new question, but I was going to say something else, and now I've forgotten the thing.
Go ahead.
So you had asked about whether we should have like priorities, and I think the ones that we know are sunsetting should be the priority, and then we go through and make sure there's nothing that's going to be adversely affected that we don't know about. Beyond that, I think as long as it's in sections and it's not just, in numerical order, I think sunsetting regulations would be the priority first, and then the, themes as we need to going forward beyond that. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So for in advance, how far in advance of a meeting do you think is enough time to give people to read and kind of to read and comprehend, so that we're not, seeing it for the first time in the meeting. Because if a meeting's only an hour, what would like 3 or 4 days be enough time, or does it need to be more time than that?
Do you want me to
A
raise
couple
my hand?
things. You did, but hold on just one second, Dr. Rowe. Thank you. A couple things. Karen, I have somebody texting me stating that they cannot get into the viewing link. That it's listed as CEPC regular ad hoc committee meeting and the date, but they're not able to get into it. Okay. So 2 things. Before we go into how far in advance, how about we start off with, are we in agreement that we should tackle the sunsetting regulations first? Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Rowe, okay, yes. So we're all in agreement. So we're going to tackle the sunsetting regulations first. We've got a good start because SDE went through them and kind of gave some recommendations that we can review. And then we also got feedback from the board. So that's great. 2, how far in advance do we think is a reasonable time in order for us to kind of review them, digest them, and be prepared for the meeting? Go ahead, Dr. Rowe.
Kristen, you're not going to love this, but I think I need a week because I need the weekend. I'm busy all week with work, and I at least need a Saturday or a Sunday that I could really jump into this important work where I'm not disturbed. But I do want to speak to the chunking of the themes when I get a chance.
If you want to do that, well, how about we go into the time frame? We can go back to that and see what your thoughts are. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Because right now we said that we definitely want to focus on sunsetting as a group. So then it sounds like a week. Are we all in agreement that about 5 business days prior is what we're looking at? Okay, prior to the meeting. So 5 business days prior. All right. And then Dr. Rose, or something else you wanted to mention in terms of the sunsetting regulations?
Right. So, it's difficult for us to figure out what's, like, to your point, Kristen, it's not like this is a digital document where it's got links to other areas that are related. So I do think that I agree with you that we should chunk it in themes. I don't know how we're going to do that other than taking the entire, regulations that are going to, and then dumping it into some kind of a, maybe AI, and then having them like deliver the themes in different components. It's the only thing I can think of that's going to make sure that we hit those points, because this is the problem with doing it like that, is that something always is, you're relying on something that's in effect right now that is a barrier to you changing things to move forward. Which is kind of what makes the idea of just scrapping everything and starting from scratch an interesting one, right? So, but I'm all about trying to figure out a way to keep things chunked or themed to the best extent that we can.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. And I see all some heads nodding. So I think that folks are in agreement with like trying to get things moving and looking at chunks. In our initial chunk or theme is the sunsetting regulations. So 5 business days before. The next question then becomes, how frequently are we meeting? And at what time are we meeting? So I know I had sent out the message asking if Fridays worked, and I've gotten some feedback that Fridays did work from like 3:30 on. I do know that, Karen, you've got a hard stop at 4:30, correct? Yes.
Yes, I do.
So
Today.
Okay. Okay, today. Okay, thank you. So if we did a meeting from 3:30 to 4:30, would that work for most? I see Sarah's hand up.
Yeah, I can probably make anything work. I just wondered if we could, and I know you all are in schools until dismissal time. I wondered if 3:15 is a possibility, but I can make it work.
All right, and Catherine Rowe.
You're on mute.
Can't hear you. I'm sorry, Catherine.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So never mind. What I was going to say is yeah, so let's just, if we can, I'm just going to put it on Kristen and Jen, like, when do you think you'll be able to start on a Friday? I think we're all free right now, and I'm a little bit more relaxed because I have nothing coming in and nothing much tomorrow. So this is a great time for us to meet. Too bad we're not closer. We could have a, dinner. But so just, I think that whenever you guys finish up and you wrap up, I know you probably want to get out of the building, but I'm okay with, like, right after the day, 3:15, 3:30, like, let's work around your schedule, because I have a more flexible schedule on Friday.
I mean, potentially I could start a meeting at 2:45, but then I would have to hand off management of the meeting until I dismissed my students and then rejoin. So there is that component of it, but it would really be like 5 to 10 minutes to dismiss my students and then return to the meeting. So I could start at a 2:45. I could go until 3:20, hand off, and then probably be back on by like 3:30, 3:35 to kind of wrap up if we're looking at an hour to an hour and a half meeting. What are thoughts on that? Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, because I teach secondary, I'm out at 2:16, and on Fridays, no one wants to stay after school and learn physics on Friday, so I don't generally have students after school on Friday. So I could do anytime on Friday after 2:15, but if it makes sense, it might just make sense to wait till 3:30. That way your kids are dismissed and you're not worried of, like, where are they and, like, who's watching them,
Right.
Does that give you time to get home, though, or are you then doing it in the building and it gets late? That's.
So for me, I would just stay at work and like I am now and do the meeting from here and then go home afterwards. I think Friday I could swing at 3:15. I can get coverage for dismissal depending on how often our meetings are. And that would allow some wiggle room from like 3:15 to 4:15. And if it went over by like 1 minute or 5 minutes or whatever, it wouldn't be super disruptive in terms of anyone needing to kind of like finish up or get to where they need to go before rush, the traffic and all the things that happen on a Friday. So why don't we think for 3:15 to 4:15 at the moment, potentially 3:30 to 4:30. I will kind of just double check on the coverage. And then how often would we want to have these meetings? Bi-weekly? I don't think once a month because just the amount of work that we have to do would be great, but I also don't want to tax people with saying like every single week that is what's going to happen, especially if we're trying to get things in 5 business days prior to the meeting. We want people to walk away from the meeting, be able to like do some work on things, review it, also circle back to their own organizations possibly and get thoughts from their organizations on closing that feedback loop before the next meeting. So would bi-weekly for the time being work? And then if we feel like we need to do more, we can add more. It looks like we've got some yeses. So Sarah says yes. I see a thumbs up from Catherine and from Kristen. I'm in agreement with that. So we'll do 3:15 to 4:15 tentatively bi-weekly. That being said, we don't have a lot on our agenda at this time. Kristen, do you think 2 weeks from now is appropriate, or do you think like in a week from now we should be doing this, the next meeting?
Can I just, before you make that determination, I know you asked
Sure.
Kristen and not me. I just want to let you know because I want you to have quorum. But I'm a CAPE accreditor, so there's a CAPE visit the week after next. So on a Friday afternoon, I'll be traveling back from a CAPE conference, and I would not be available because the flight isn't until the conference ends at like 12 or 1. Then I have to get on a flight. So if you scheduled a meeting on that, I think it's the 19th, I would not be able to attend. So just know that in advance. Maybe we can try for like next week. I'm just saying, I'm throwing that out there. And then we could do bi-weekly from there, just because of the schedule. But again, if you think you'll have quorum.
I say the more the merrier, my friend. The more the merrier.
Is
Thank you
there a
for
way for me
letting
to
us
like
know that. Yeah.
is there a way, like, I just went through my bylaws in my own department, and so is there a way for us to like vote by proxy? So let's say I do all the work with Kristen, and then I say this is what I need to do, and I'm voting, but I'm not able to get there, just to try to move the work along. Is there a way to do that?
Karen, I'm going to defer to you on that question.
There is not. You either have to be virtually present with your camera on or in person. There is not a voting by proxy rule permissible in these bylaws for this board. Unfortunately,
thank
those are the only two options. You're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So with that in mind, I guess the question is with Kristen at this time, because you're kind of contemplating starting that work for us, which we appreciate. Thank you very much. Do you think the 12th would be an appropriate time to, knowing that we probably wouldn't be able to have materials in that 5 business days before? I think that would be the caveat, right? So would the 12th, if I'm looking at my calendar here, next Friday, what are your thoughts, Kristen?
So for the 12th, I think might be too early because today is 5 days, business days before the 12th.
Right.
So we could, well, so we could try to schedule it for the 19th and then send out an RSVP to kind of capture the 2 ad hoc committee members that weren't able to make it today. And then if the 19th doesn't work, try to move it to the 26th.
All right.
Thanks, Kristen. And you know what, Jen? Next week I'm going to be at Central with the CSDE meeting with the EPPs, and then we have an AACTE meeting. So I won't even be. Yeah, I won't even know if we'll be finished up in order to get there by 3:30. So yeah.
If we can figure out Patrice's technical difficulties for the meeting, and then Dr. Ritchie can always be kind of like a backup, like a alternate, right, when she attends. So if we don't have quorum, we can have her as an alternate for the group potentially as part of that to help with quorum as well. But I think if we all also just are able to reply to the meeting invite that Karen sends out, it'll give us a good idea if we have quorum or not. By clicking that yes, I'm attending, or no, I'm not attending in there. So let's plan for the 19th, 3:15 to 4:15. It would be virtual, just to aid in this kind of process. And which means that potentially speaking, Kristen might have some things to us. Okay. Potentially speaking, we would have some things to us by the 12th. Does that sound okay? The 12th. All right. And then for the purpose of this meeting, because it's already 4:09, I think we got through days and time. So I'm asking for a motion that we have our first biweekly meeting starting on the 19th from 3:15 to 4:15.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. And a second from Catherine Rowe.
Second from Rowe.
All in favor, please raise your hand now.
Can we make that, it's going to be virtual? Can we add that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Virtual. Thank you. Amend that to virtual. Do we have a second on the amendment?
Seconded.
Seconded. Thank you. All right. All in favor for us to begin our biweekly meetings on September 19th from 3:15 to 4:15, tentatively virtual. All in favor, raise your hand now. Perfect. Thank you. In addition, I'm going to be the the chair of this particular one, only because I've read these and I have a good handle on them already. And I want to be able to kind of like move us forward, and I know the amount of work that's going to go into this. So instead of kind of placing that on someone's plate who might not have been sitting with this for a while already, I'll go ahead and take on that responsibility. And I will appoint Dr. Ritchie as an alternate when she's able to attend the meetings. Did I do that right, Karen? Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
So
You're all set.
I think that is pretty much it in terms of follow-up tasks. It'll be the notes from the August 11th meeting and the SDE document with the links to become familiar with the regulations and the notes that the board provided to us through that review. Is there any other discussion or things that we would like brought up to this ad hoc at this time?
I have no question about the ad hoc, but can I just ask a question about the regular board, or do you want to stay on after the call so I can ask that question?
You can, how about give me a call, because I think this is being recorded so that we have to close the recording on it. So
Okay,
if you
thank
want,
you.
you can, I'll send you my, I think you have my number, but if not,
Okay.
just give me a quick call right after.
Okay.
So Sarah, go ahead.
Just, is everything you just mentioned to prepare for the next meeting in the email that Karen sent, or is that something else that'll be sent to us?
That'll be sent to you afterwards. So
Okay,
following
thank
this
you.
meeting, Karen will send you the notes from the August 11th regulation review that the board did, and then resubmit that document from SDE with the links on it for all those regs that
Okay.
they went through.
Thank you.
So thank you for that clarifying question. All right. So barring no other conversation or any other questions, I would cater a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, so moved
Second.
by Dr. Rose, seconded by Kristen. All right, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand, raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you very much for your time and your effort, and I look forward to the work ahead of us. I think it's
Thank
going to be
you.
important, and I think it'll be great. And then Catherine, just give me a call.
I will. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great
thank
weekend,
you.
everyone.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.